million bond in his civil fraud trial. Are his namesake buildings at risk?
If I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath.
Plus, the new questions about what Trump meant.
The events of January 6th, 2021 are recent enough that we know that he would perpetrate a bloodbath rather than allow our constitutional system to work.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, I'm Norah O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. We're going to begin tonight with Donald Trump facing a cash crunch. The former president is on the brink of being forced to surrender some of his most valuable real estate properties to help pay that $454 million civil fraud judgment in New York. He's already admitted that he doesn't have the nearly $500 million in cash. And today, his lawyers revealed that more than 30 firms said they were unable or, quote, unwilling to accept the risk associated with such a large bond. The clock is now ticking with that bond due next week. It's worth remembering the civil judgment stems from a ruling that Trump falsely valued parts of his real estate empire for financial gain. And then on the campaign trail, Trump is also defending himself after a series of disturbing remarks about migrants, January 6th defendants, and warning of a, quote, bloodbath if he loses in November. It was all while discussing tariffs on Chinese-made cars. CBS's Robert Costa is here, and he'll start us off tonight.
Former President Donald Trump could soon be facing a financial crisis. His lawyers today revealing in a court filing that Trump has failed to obtain a $454 million bond, calling it a practical impossibility. It's due in just 1 week, and without it, New York Attorney General Letitia James could freeze his bank accounts and seize his prized properties, including Trump Tower and 40 Wall Street.
The bottom line is this is rigged.
Trump, who was unable to reach agreement with more than 30 companies that provide appeal bonds, is also scrambling to raise money for the general election. CBS News has learned Trump is considering enlisting his former 2016 campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, a convicted felon who was found guilty of committing several financial crimes in 2018 and later pardoned by Trump. Meanwhile, the former president has ramped up his incendiary rhetoric on the campaign trail.
We're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars if I get elected. Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
Trump insists he was referring to a potential bloodbath in the automobile industry. In the past, Trump has warned of bedlam if Biden wins, suggesting there will be anger if he is convicted of a crime.
It'll be bedlam in the country. It's a very bad thing. It's a very bad precedent. As we said, it's the opening of a Pandora's box.
Over the weekend, Trump also referred to migrants as animals and described those convicted for crimes related to January 6 as hostages and patriots. That remark drawing criticism from both sides of the aisle.
It's just unacceptable.
A hostage is someone who's being held by a criminal group or a terrorist group for a financial or political ransom. That's got nothing to do with people who have been criminally charged and given due process.
Meanwhile, former Trump White House advisor Peter Navarro will likely be headed to jail. Today, the Supreme Court rejected Navarro's push to stave off his sentence for refusing to comply with the congressional subpoena, and he is now set to report to a correctional facility tomorrow in Florida. Nora?
That is some big news. Robert Costa, thank you. President Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke today for the first time in more than a month amid growing tensions over Israel's offensive in Gaza. And the president warned Netanyahu that the U.S. would not support an operation into Rafah without a plan to ensure the safety of innocent civilians. CBS's Chris Livesay reports that Israeli forces today raided a hospital in northern Gaza as famine there spreads.
Gunfire cracked at the Al-Shifa hospital complex in northern Gaza, where 30,000 Palestinians are sheltering. But among them, according to the Israeli military, were Hamas militants. The course of the war and its humanitarian costs are driving a wedge between Israel and its closest ally, the United States. President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu hadn't spoken for at least a month until today.
On the call today, President Biden asked the Prime Minister to send a senior interagency team composed of military, intelligence, and humanitarian officials to Washington in the coming days to hear U.S. concerns about Israel's current Rafah planning.
Israel agreed to that request. This comes after Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer last week called for new elections here. Now the Israeli leader has shot back.
I think Schumer's statements are wholly inappropriate. I think we're not a banana republic.
Negotiations reconvened in Doha today, with Israel offering a 6-week pause for 40 hostages. Among those still in captivity, Itai Hen. Last week, Israel confirmed the American was killed in October, but Hamas is holding his body as a bargaining chip, says his father.
Say, I give you a blank piece of paper. If you have a daughter, if you have a son, and I ask you, put a price on that piece of paper. What is that price?
And tonight, the U.S. confirms Israel has killed Hamas's number 3 military official, Marwan Issa. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says justice will come for the others hiding in the tunnels. Nora?
Chris Livesay, thank you so much. Back here at home, it was a weekend of deadly violence in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, with gunfire erupting as hundreds of young people gathered for spring break and St. Patrick's Day parties. CBS's Christian Benavides reports from Fort Lauderdale.